They say the sequel is never as good as the first one, and that's often true. Adam Pacitti, for example, is very much the tiresome Jaws 2 to my toothy original, but it's not impossible that sometimes number 2 tops number 1. Godfather Part 2, Spider-Man 2, Empire, that principle sometimes translates to the athletic world. Diaz-McGregor 2, The Thriller in Manila, sometimes rematches can top the encounters that came before them, and that can generate a huge amount of hype. For example, a few weeks back, Martin Kirby and Will Ospreay put on a near match of the year for WCPW. Check that out here, and we can now announce they will have their one-on-one rematch at the November 9th tapings in London. Let the hype for that begin now. Anyway, enough shilling, back to the list. I'm Adam from WhatCulture.com, and here are the 10 most anticipated wrestling rematches ever. Number 10, Okada versus Tanahashi. I really want to put this higher on the list, but the simple truth is, while it may be the greatest rivalry in modern Japanese wrestling, to call an Okada-Tanahashi match as anticipated in the West as it is in the East, it would be stretching things a tad, you loathsome Philistines. It definitely belongs on this list though. Now, unlike the other entries on this list, this doesn't really refer to a specific match. Hiroshi Tanahashi and Kazuchika Okada have had 9 singles matches together, with multiple Meltzer 5-star encounters among them. They first battled in 2012, and every single time they've had a rematch after that, it's been regarded as huge news in Japan, with each successive match managing to top previous hype levels. Number 9, TLC 2. Whenever I think of TLC 2, I can't help but think of a nightmare scenario where, after Crazy Sexy Cool took over the world, scientists build a second, bigger R&B group to combat the unstoppable power of T-Boz's Left Eye in Chile, like a cyborg TLC running on steam and clockwork parts, and they fight on a waterfall and... No? Alright. At SummerSlam 2000, the Hardys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudley Boys competed in the first ever tables, ladders and chairs match to great success. At WrestleMania 17, they did it all over again, even better than before. Fans could not wait for a second helping of hardware-centric carnage. Seriously though, like, if scientists did build a TLC 2, what would they sound like? Number 8, The Undertaker vs Triple H. WrestleMania 27 was a difficult show. There just wasn't enough on it that felt truly WrestleMania worthy. One very lovely exception to the rule was a no-holds-barred match between Triple H and The Undertaker. So good was the match that when Undertaker challenged the King of Kings to a rematch at Mania 28, fans were keen. Then, 2 announcements were made. Shawn Michaels would be the special guest referee, and it was Hell in a Cell. Suddenly, the end of an era became one of the most hyped rematches in Mania history, and one of the few that actually managed to live up to it. Number 7, Shawn Michaels vs Razor Ramon. At WrestleMania 10, HBK and The Bad Guy had the second ladder match WWF ever put on, but the first to really capture mainstream attention. Over the course of 18 minutes, the two men crafted an instant classic, and 22 years later, ladder matches are still a staple of the WWE diet. Certainly the one that provides the most iron. Ba-dum-dum-tit. Oh, they're steel, aren't they? Oh, f*** off. Over a year later, the two men took to the steel one more time in a highly anticipated rematch at SummerSlam 1995. Was it better? That divides people, but few can deny that in a bad year for WWE and a very bad SummerSlam, that match was a ray of really painful sunshine. Number 6, Ricky Steamboat vs Ric Flair. Ric Flair didn't make my top 10 wrestlers list of all time because I'm a radical dude who plays by no rules, but it's a truth universally acknowledged that the Nature Boy was quite good at wrestling, as was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Like Lemonade and Southern Comfort, the two were excellent apart, but together they were magic. At 1989's Chi-Town Rumble, Steamboat beat Flair to win his first ever world title in a match that was regarded as an instant classic at the time. The rematch was then set within a month, which whipped fans into a frenzy. A 2 out of 3 falls match at Clash of Champions 6, Raging Cajun. That match was also an instant classic, and it's the 1-2 punch of match and rematch in quick succession that forces people to mention Steamboat and Flair whenever talk turns to the greatest feud of all time. Number 5, Hulk Hogan vs Andre the Giant. WrestleMania 3 saw one of the most iconic moments in the history of wrestling take place when Hogan and Andre the Giant clashed for the WWF Championship. A slightly smaller and blonder Goliath versus Goliath match. When Hogan slammed the big boy, the fans went nuts. Their rivalry would continue through the year, and when the two met again with the title on the line on a February 1988 episode of Main Event, the buzz was so heavy that the program drew 33 million viewers, which made it the most watched American wrestling match in history. Sure, it ended with Ted DiBiase and 2 Dave Hebners, but hey ho, can't win them all. Number 4, Sting versus Ric Flair. The ultimate case of altruism versus avarice, Sting's war with Ric Flair played a huge role in keeping WCW relevant going into the 1990s. The duo's first match came in 1988, where they wrestled a time limit draw at the NWA's first ever Clash of Champions. Sting won their first rematch at Starrcade 89, but that wasn't for the title. The rematch for the big gold belt, that came at 1990's Great American Bash, with the feud intensified by a knee injury keeping the Stinger from challenging sooner. Finally, Sting overcame Flair in a bit of an overbooked match, but hell, the anticipation was unreal. Number 3, Bret Hart versus Steve Austin. Bret Hart and Steve Austin had an unbelievable feud through 1996 and 1997. It started with Austin's King of the Ring victory, the fallout of which saw him continually taunt the injured Hart into accepting a match with him, and the two eventually tangled in a classic match at Survivor Series 1996. Their Mania match was so good that people forget their Survivor Series match was a barnstormer as well. Then Austin cheated his way to victory at the 1997 Royal Rumble at Hart's expense, and Bret quit WWE on the following night's Raw in protest. Hart then won and lost a WWE title over the coming weeks, but the belt was in neither man's hands heading into WrestleMania 13. It was a bout driven by the purest blood grudge. The double turn that happened in that match has cemented its place in history, but perhaps slightly lost to history was that it was a rematch and one of the biggest in wrestling at the time. Number 2, Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker. At WrestleMania 25, Undertaker and Shawn Michaels put on what many have as their greatest match of all time. As JR would say, "I've just had an out-of-body experience." 1 year later, they met again, except this time, Shawn Michaels' career was on the line. It main evented Mania over the title because it needed to. Simple as that, really. And number 1, Steve Austin versus The Rock. Shawn and Taker could have taken this spot. It was close, but here's how I look at it. The Shawn Taker match was a white-hot matchup at the time where the industry was struggling a bit. This was a white-hot matchup when the industry was at its peak. At WrestleMania 15, the Rattlesnake bested the corporate champion in a stone-cold thriller. 2 years later, both men were even more popular. The corporate champ was now the people's champ, and WWF was the only game in town. All eyes were on WrestleMania 17 since WCW closed, and the two biggest stars in wrestling were having their Mania rematch. It was absolutely unspeakably huge and a classic to boot. Also, their rematch at WrestleMania 19, people kind of look forward to that one as well. And that's our list. Did we miss any out? Tell us about it in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter here. I'm Adam from WhatCulture.com, and I'll see you soon.